Both President Trump and Mr. Kaepernick have correct positions in defenses of their positions regarding the American flag and principles treatments. But they're also wrong together as collusions with the breaching method that showed everyone how to speak for American history. We're supposed to understand how James Madison's plan and himself, as the only founder we know the name of, how and why he had to force the rest of the founders. There are intelligence families that have been showing fake things to the presidents. A little coward, wimpy person, in other words, too. Little coward. I never had a class with them, never saw them around campus. They try to make one fake exception real quick, purposely, because to make a fake exception, which was right before I graduated from high school. Justice Levinskis has roles of people I never had classes with my grammar school. Increasingly collusion/S with them, with names all from the founding locations in Old Weathersfield, all along on Main Street in conjunctions to it, and all along that, like it turns into Wells Road, Route 175. All along that road and route and the corners of it are people that have been planting evidences and pretending other. And that's recorded various ways. But they're pretending other is recorded, and they have been. There have been collusions with all sides of criminal and civil cases and the interbranch and names next to the state corrections offices and judicial branch offices, involved with intelligence families near me, involved with wire crimes, falsified police reports, with multiple retired police chiefs and co-defendants of former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and multiple years apart, first force child abusers, leaders of kids, also involved with predicate acts with facts methods/S that are also manifest at and next to everyone's house and next to them too. Same way. It's where everyone speaks to others with subject treatments, names treatments. Phishing too. Both phishing with an F and with a P. For the breach method to cover up how they're actually recorded natures as value with principles treatments regarding the law. For example, the state of Connecticut corrections offices and judicial branch offices increasingly have rules with people involved with identity thefts, fraud, slanders, and collusions with all sides of cases and the courts and intelligence and the news at the same time with the same sequence shifts. These are also people speaking about things like racism and prejudice as collusions with sequence shifts, and where they have all sides of crime scenes and the investigators and the interbranch and the news and all natures of conjunctions to them, their family members, also all at the same time having to hide the same sequence shifts, fake transcripts, self-value. There's a lot more too. Everyone forced to speak through others, and or forced to speak when we're forced to speak alone too. Those contexts where they do that, they're increasingly just faking transcripts there, fake ties that never conversations that never were. Weathersfield police and chiefs retired and their families and intimate ties to themselves and to their families have collusion/S with the same house/S connected with predicate acts in my area, and as ones with the interbranch switching and forging names and refusing to identify themselves legitimately. They've been putting multiple falsified police reports for the same arrests. And these are ones before and after the World Trade Center attack to cover up how Harper courts and the Britain Superior Court have people involved with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, his co-defendants, their family members, and names with syntax regarding the depositions of them, who are also all sides of criminal and civil cases and other depositions, who are time collusions, again, with the news and layers of other, including people increasingly tied to totally different body dumping spots and murderers years apart and untimely deaths. And they were timed use/us of that. Facebook people also have collusion. There's a Celeste Wells will tell you she was influenced to put fake to federal evidences crimes with people, with her educators. I never even saw her on the inside of a school in my life, Celeste Wells. She planted evidences outside of the campus with people involved increasingly with a principal child abuser proven And one's years before that had been involved with that, forcing that. I recorded that being forced various ways, recorded. They're pretending others recorded by faking transcripts. So, and they also made confessions too. As strangers that sought me out in my area to make confessions to me to make it look like we're a group with their roles with like an O'Brien family and a Cololo family, have roles with a Justico Vinskis and a Mark Violet and a whole bunch like a people named Oliveri and a Joshua Stryker next to Trinity College involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and people making nonverbal confirmations. Others make the confessions for them, like Robert Luskin, former standing chairperson on the Racketeering Influence and Corrupt Organizations Act. He has roles of Little Coward, Joshua Stryker, involved with. If he's military too, please let me fight him, President Trump, because he's the one who, in other words, and everyone's speaking through others. Oh, let's clear it up. What did he pretend in the databases with Dean Alford and former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin? A bunch of people at next to Trinity College are also at next to Central. That's in Hartford, Connecticut, and Central Connecticut State University is in New Britain, Connecticut. Since I was a kid, the campuses, these are also people with Quinnipiac University involved planting evidences, sequence shifts, fake ties, fake nature of ties to people. Kevin Harris has his mother and family involved also with the Leahy family and prosecutors and judges like a Brian Silver involved with sexual and medical offenders of kids, identity theft, fraud, slanders, falsified police reports, years apart, stacked, and multiple falsified police reports for the same arrest. For the same arrest, they'll put a multiple falsified police reports and put a charge with no writing and make all kinds of confessions too. See, this preaching method used confessions before the church did. And they're still making confessions to the hyper foreign. Everyone, because you guys have other things replaced for James Madison's communications to you at campuses A through Z. Ye who went to the best campuses and the worst campuses. The difference of that was is also used by the breaching method to measure and maintain self-value collusion /S with itself to an extent while pretending other or everyone sensing for itself. Anybody not that way as value, as criminally foreign influence, criminal citizens, natures, positive, negative names, uses, sequence values. So WFSB faked conversations with me about the World Trade Center attack and about other as the roles of other natures of organized crimes in the same fake stories. The same fake story. They just put things in, run around. The intelligence tied to them have roles with identity theft, fraud, slanders, all kinds of collusions with all natures of crime scenes. They're incapable of making a proper outcome in any case for how it is recorded their collusions. New Britain Superior Court has a bunch of people involved with sequence shifts and federal evidences crimes, with a John Maiano and tied to him and his educators involved with sequence shifts, identity theft, fraud, slanders, falsified police reports, per intelligence families near me, and people involved with retired police chiefs from Wethersfield and Rocky Hill and intercities with the same house /S with wire crimes, fake phone transcripts, changed phone transcripts. Wethersfield police have some Mendez police that faked the conversation with me. One of them faked the conversation. I didn't have a conversation with any officer at the police station. I went down there, had someone else speak for me, and they put my sentence to my Saudi friend. I was only writing on a fake police report with a charge, which was a multiple. Now that's another police report, hyper additional from the one, for example, Bob Chase is associated with the same thing. Bob Chase with Whiting Forensics said a Phil Cololo was involved. Others also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. Some Mendez police involved with sexual and medical offenders of kids with a Phil Cololo, also with overt criminal enterprises and private ones. And his roles, there's an Eric Mendez with the hallway of New Britain Superior Court involved with judges and prosecutors, including black and white female judges, with identity theft, fraud, slavery, with some black KKK theme, Confederate flag theme, Latino theme, Italian theme, Irish theme, involved with wire crimes to the Wethersfield police, digital crimes to them, and Whiting Forensics, increasingly as digital crimes with people from Facebook, and with the FBI, with Twitter, upskirt pictures, as the same ones before that with Facebook, involved with the Facebook page of a principal upskirt Nature's campus. Also with WTNH, that has people named O'Neill with Whiting Forensics and the FBI, and Wethersfield Police and other police departments with the same house, collusions with them, planting evidence of fake ties and fake natures of ties to me, and at the corner of the street near a grammar school I went, is increasingly with people tied to Russians and people tied to Ukraine who were involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, intercities, next to the campuses, timing where people are going to be, and getting away with it because they've been using all ages and natures of investigators and of investigations in their campuses. Criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought since they were kids. You guys are affected by this. That's why you guys are incapable of responding to people they have criminally foreign influence readings of statutes that they already shown they need to hide regarding the validity of what is said online or what is typed online. They've been changing and faking digital evidences typed. So, and spoken. So, a Joshua Julian and a Ray Cololo are also names on YouTube involved here with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and people with the name Scalora, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed also by Wethersfield Police switching and forging names involved with predicate acts on my street since I was a kid with them, as their time collusions with retired police chiefs and their families in intimate ties, and their rules with Elm Streets and Rocky Hill and Wethersfield, and the corner of it from years before the Mazzucato Bakery had rules with the retired police chiefs. They had rules with a whole bunch of people directly and indirectly, planting predicate acts on all sides of my house, and with a bunch of police forms involved with the syntax and the confessions. Good people are made to repeat things and fake things. In other words, they're fishing for means to cover up how the guys were obligated. The law reads that we are only allowed to speak for ourselves. The interbranch are forging into hurting me because they know I recorded them involved with murder confessions of people, intercities connected, untimely deaths, and other natures of organized crimes and methods of them next to the campuses, including medical and fire campuses, with the families next to the all ages and natures of campuses, also with the names next to it, time collusions with life progression cover-ups. A whole bunch of people next to Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut, have collusions also with these names next to the state judicial branch offices in Wethersfield, next to the state corrections offices. There increasingly were and are collusions with the World Trade Center attack. Mendez police, again, also forced my Saudi friend to collusions with them. And I learned more and more that my Saudi friend knew these people before I knew them. People who have been putting predicate acts with facts in databases, with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and unions, and various natures of federal criminals involved with legal cases that the news has been lying about the outcomes of. And worse, WFSB has a whole bunch of people with a union, with Connecticut unions like Local 230, involved with them with sexual and medical offenders of kids, foreign and domestic countries involved with them, including Saudi attackers involved with WFSB Connecticut's Channel 3 News. And the sources of WTNH have been planting evidences all along Route 175. Justin Kovinskis, Eric Jensen, and two Corone brothers are also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with intelligence at Central Connecticut State University, Middlesex Community College, and interstates, involved with people on all sides of my house with federal evidences, crimes with them, identity theft, fraud, slanders, he said, she said, and fake ties, fake natures of ties to people as groups. That's why they had strangers since I was a kid make confessions, and then I found out later their ties to the other ones increasingly involved with wire crimes and wire crime methods with multiple police departments and falsified police departments. Oh, why didn't you say anything? I said and communicated this as other people did. People aren't listening to people because they also have behavior racketeering worse than war crimes. There's a Leahy family that Rick Ciampaglione and others sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. He has roles with intelligence families near me and his educators. They have roles with with identity theft, fraud, slanders, federal planting fake things in databases with the Leahy family, but foreign and domestic medical families involved also with judges and prosecutors and their kids, and the kids of the leaders of the kids, involved with overt criminal enterprises and private ones at the same time. They also have roles with the different natures of drugs and counters to it as collusion/S because they have to hide life progressions. They would have collusions, all natures of crime scenes too. These are increasingly people at the corrections offices and judicial branch offices and next to it, with the same house, increasingly with digital and wire crimes, with Wethersfield police, and with the campuses, including with sexual and medical offenders roles, forcing that. Phil Cololo was one of the ones with Whiting Forensics, involved with predicate acts on my street, also with a Joshua Julian. I never saw him on my street, but he confessed it on Facebook. And they have roles with people with all natures of positions. They're incapable of defending themselves and of affording not to obfuscate and change and fake and hide. And self-value roles with that, what others say regarding even World Trade Center predicate acts. Get me off the fake conversations with the World WFSB about the World Trade Center attack. And they hid what I recorded them doing with forcing organized crimes with all ages and natures of campuses at the same time, and with names next to them, and with their sources planting identity thefts, fraud, slanders. So then people can't go back and speak about the past honestly or afford anyone to. Otherwise, they start censoring, and they use those people who have collusion/S with that. People named Kerr increasingly. I never saw him in my grammar school. He's increased. There's a Jerry Kerr. There are more than one people named Jerry Kerr, and a Mike Kerr, and a mother. I don't know their mother's name, but they're involved with the World Trade Center attack and insurance investigators, and all ages and natures of investigators already having been collusion/S, including with organized crimes, all along Route 3 in conjunctions to it and to that, like the state judicial branch offices, all along where Franklin Avenue turns into the Wethersfield side. And in other words, Franklin Avenue has the state corrections offices there. Next to it, foreign and domestic military have people named Cololo and DeMoro involved with predicate acts on my street, including with home break-ins years apart and relative wire crimes of the Wethersfield police and the police chiefs and their intimate ties. And then they say, oh, well, look, he's saying things about his neighbor. They're trying to they brought this up. I'm repeating what they're saying, but the ones who aren't getting on paper since I was a kid. And they use these crime methods where they put multiple falsified police reports and make confessions tied to it. And they need to do that because they already made confessions to a breaching method, and it showed them how it exploited that. Increasingly, they have their own differences and other people's differences. They have some black KKK, Latino themed, Italian themed, Irish themed. There's a Frankie Reese involved with people with a Clinton correctional facility who are also involved with putting fake natures of ties to me with the people that escaped from that prison on Facebook. They were planting evidences per investigators and their campuses that need to cover up what was actually recorded before and after the World Trade Center attack and pretend other. So they do little tricks like that. So while they were reported on the loose, on the lam, so to speak, Ray Cololo repeated that phrase, on the lam. No, he has roles with the foreign and domestic intelligence. People named Ray Cololo, more than a father and son with that same name. And other people, one of them, and both of them are the Ray Cololo. And there's one with a different last name. I don't know his last name, but his name is Ray too. A grandfather of Ray Cololo, who is involved with a whole bunch of people with syntax at the corner of Carriage Hill Drive and Fox Hill, who will tell you I never had a conversation with them. They were just repeating fake things. With the people involved with the sexual and medical offenders of kids with multiple police departments, like named O'Brien. Also with Sandy Hook campuses. These are also people involved with doctors tied to Adam Lanza, ones with badges and ones with gavels, who have been putting fake evidences in databases, fake transcripts. And their family members are collusions with them and with their syntax with the intermediate. Like Judge Killian has digital crimes with some sexual and medical offenders of kids proven and more then and now. And he put fake things in databases, sequence shifts, changed and hid digital evidences and rape threats. And lying about they have rules with Hartford Hospital and the names on the and our businesses and houses next to it with their families with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, former director of the FBI too, his co-defendants, their family members with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, putting fake things in databases, collusions acting tied to that. They have people that run into triages to hide line progressions as overt criminal enterprises, private ones, the family members of fire departments, their doctors, the patients, right when other people are forced to be there. So they can be and they put fake transcripts, fake conversations that never were, and they make the other people make statements to make as the patients and enforced criminals to make it look like people were engaged in the conversation with them. Increasingly, there are people named Pierce that will tell you, I don't know them at all. I only had hello a couple times to a Matt Pierce. Increasingly, people named Pierce are next to the state. I'm next to the all sides of the Connecticut, Weathersfield Community Center has roles with fire departments and people tied to a John Maiano and people named O'Brien and Colo. I basically never saw John Maiano and a Colo next to each other, but Colo repeated the name John Maiano to me. And timed where we walked to make a fake it look like I knew him by making more than one instance of being timed right where I was going to be. Probably there are proofs that they took pictures of a Paul Zano near me to pretend I knew him. Increasingly, a Paul Zano has been planting identity theft, fraud, slander, sequence shifts, fake ties, fake natures of ties to me with his educators since I was a little kid and people I don't know. Increasingly, a former mayor Gold are involved with him, and people with the Parks and Rec involved with some untimely deaths, and other natures of organized crimes, with people associated with a Paul Zano and people with the name Zano. In other words, I only know him seeking me out to make confessions and demonstrations. I didn't even respond. Then, in other words, they try to make it look like I that's why we had this boring conversation. They drove to they had me go with them to Johnson and Wales in Rhode Island. A Paul Zano and a Ray Colo have intelligence collusions with the FBI and foreign and domestic military and interstates, and with state police with Whiting Forensics, involved also with this Joshua Julian with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and people associated. In other words, get them on paper, one name and sequence, please. The state comptroller too. They're influencing you. They lie to your. There's a I forgot her name. I don't even know her. Many people tied to Heather Hansen too. Have FBI Director Robert Luskin and a bunch of people that said that they were her boyfriends, and then they were pretending not to like it, and then liking it other way with former Director of the FBI Robert Luskin, the courts, judges, and prosecutors that have been planting evidences with them, and people all along Route 3 that keep getting brought up in the context where there are child abusers and identity thefts, fraud, slanders, if anyone brings it up. You guys are just faking. No, what's actually recorded shows that all sides of criminal and civil cases, the investigations, the investigators, the intelligence tied to that foreign and domestic news at the same time, they're putting self-value, the same sequence shifts and other using that. There's a breaching method. There's a scientific valuable breaching method that is being forced replaced. Right from the communications of our founders behind James Madison and his plan that enabled them to counter extort the other colonists and force them to be a unity from inside key positions and people inside. More than 13 colonies were entrenched, with slavery entrenched northern colonies and southern colonies. That's not understood clearly because Americans didn't do their homework, because the people who did their homework had criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw, principles treatments, convictions for the sciences, for our founders, and for nature itself. Self-valued roles, otherwise that body was sensed, including if that body was a majority of people, including if it was everyone, and it was is adapted to. So this legislation, Donald Trump, Barack Obama, Joe Biden, the other presidents, in many ways they're smarter, know more things, but I don't know, wiser than me. But I focus what they did not, and it's about black people's rights of life, for example, about confessions. I was able to observe confessions they wouldn't fathom, but they would be able to fathom and understand it and heal the world by understanding it. People with Korea tied to the O'Briens, people with Korea tied to the Kevin Harris and his family involved with identity theft, fraud, slams, putting fake things in databases at a kindergarten I went to. Increasingly, with people at each campus after that, they're building upon that. There's people involved with. I have educators that recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. There are courts and police forms associated with the guy Dinavelis and names all along Route 175 in conjunctions to it and to that from Main Street in Old Weathersfield, but also along Route 3. And I'm sorry to say this, guy Dinavelis. There's a judge, his family, a Delafair family. There were people who were planting evidence on my streets from other areas. I don't know their names. And I found out some of them are tied to a Delafair family, who's also involved with from behind my back. Now, I never even saw them around my campuses, the Delafair family. They're putting fake things with people that work at the campuses, involved with their families with probate. There's a probate judge involved with drugs and medicines crimes, with psychiatry, and like at triages in prisons associated with probate court judges, where they're putting fake in other words, time collusions too with foreign and domestic medical families as ones that are intelligence families. The agencies have all kinds of delusions and organized crimes methods, uncharged but standing, relative to how this was too with criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw, natures of industries, and roles with that only allowed by the breaching method. That's one of the reasons our founders' plan only entertained that. Our founders' plan had to hide their roles, countering the rules of simultaneously of internationally monitored conversations, of locations, areas, and states collusions without only known, capable of being, and having been, needs for them to hide that. Their nature itself generates. So putting these hard penalties, these things only keep people's mouths shut or open exactly opposite the way nature needs it to be appreciated simultaneously. In other words, they're putting fake transcripts, collusions, and then they're pretending other while they're leaking through communications. It's tactile from what they say. So in other words, a Mark Violet, a Justin Govinskis, Eric Jensen, some people named Carone sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm all along Route 175, years apart, conjunctions to it and to that. Their influence to plant evidences with the people investigating, putting things so they can go ask questions at courts and things like that and measure and maintain. No one's going to tell on them. because they increasingly have a Brian Silver and retired judges involved also with these names along those spots. Intercities involved with identity theft fraud. I never had a class with Justin Govinskis and what's his name? Mark Violet or Mike Violet. They increasingly have roles with a guy who had his speaker box stolen from him, involved with victims advocates who have time collusions with victims, real victims, but he had time collusions with overt criminal enterprises and private ones in a whole bunch of different countries like Koreans, people from other countries associated with Mark Violet and the other intelligence at UConn, Central Connecticut State University, and Trinity College. Mark Violet and others have some black KKK themed confessed roles with intelligence there and with the ones in my area. And Joshua Stryker has a Dean Judd and other presidents of colleges and principals and their family members have been repeating fake things about others and using truths for lies with investigators using them then to pretend they could speak for integrity. Anyway, this preaching method showed the natures of integrity. They can't afford to have integrity spoken for properly with evidences. We have black people as whites of eyes. We have things like racism, forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded to be blamed for what a hyper-foreign caused and keeps with that. And how black and white voices collude against anyone who tries to speak about why and how, clearer than day. There are all kinds of breaching method employed, impositions upon the people of the tactically denatured suburbs, let alone the cities. Let alone people will pretend that they have free speech, try to make an example. Oh, but that's what I think we wouldn't be able to. In other words, if people follow mandated law, the people pretending that they think that honest science spoke for the cities, for the suburbs, let alone the cities. Their logic, their nature of logic has inherent to it, active to it, progressive to it, demonstration /S of the same thing. Think about the words of the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. The flag stands for the republic, but the republic and its campuses stand abridged. And the principles, treatments of religions can't defend that and afford anyone to have free speech. Because with the tactically delusions raw and out of sequence shifts self-value. For example, the beginning of the Old Testament says, only defend right here, where the names of the people, the sciences will come together. Doesn't say only defend. There's a God that's blood sacrifice. It says only defend right here syntactically, with that position of the. So that's before even the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and the tree of life in the first part of Genesis. It says only before that. It says only defend right here, where the names of the people, the sciences will come together. In the part that comes before it. The same thing with the Quran, too, has a part right up front no one knows about. And it says, all that matters is if a Muslim is going to be honest about their use of the name Allah. For the scientific value, for example, I'm translating the scientific value of for a name of the identity of value/value progression. For example, that which demonstrably demonstrated to the ancients before the sciences were criminally foreign influenced. That and how white it is showing us that its body of value progression is capable of being discerned to an extent because it's generating totally different individual species bodies. And each one of them is made up of a whole bunch of different individual bodies. And we have the same color eyes and different color eyes at the same time. And we have eyes differently from the other species bodies. Nature is showing us its distinct, non-distinct, and simultaneous relationship to itself, comes also with a slash hyper simultaneous relationship to itself that is and will only stay further positive to itself, where every identity, including its own, is relativity to positive and negative simultaneously. But see, we are a quality diffusion. And we can be systems other as itself. We can be systems other, but it demonstrates with negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. But this breaching method assigned all to roles with and as systems individually grouped into all humanity together, all humanity voicings, principles, treatments by that, theater by that, as criminal and ceaseless natures of positive and negative treatments, names treatments, self-value. Or you can't say that, people will get upset. They are behavior racketeering worse than war crimes to keep that as an outcome slash S. This is what most people want said. Everyone wants on a level, but everyone was forced to pretend other originally and still. So in other words, we have to defend. Nature shows us it is functional how its identity of value progression is hyper invisible but still discernible distinctly from how it is invisible but still discernible. Each of these species bodies has invisible but still discernible values and value, singular, but also the parts of speech of not just of English grammar, but the parts of speech of English grammar were revealed to be taught this way. They are about the invisible but still discernible. Therefore, the subject is about the invisible but still discernible slash hyper invisible but still discernible. Two, it's about the parts of speech about the invisible but still discernible. For example, a human can only appreciate a subject, individual or finite, and grouped or with active or progressively or simultaneously to an extent. And with and where and how we could discern this about our capabilities of being able to discern things, appreciate things, reality. We are also simultaneously shown that there is this same identity of value progression that is more too finite for us to discern completely and to appreciate completely, and is simultaneously too great for us to, and with active relativity to all things in ways we don't understand, except for it gives us a way slash S. But we have been prevented uses of the hyper evidential, so to speak. And the breaching method knew that form of, suits and ties, the names of the people, the sciences, which is a phrase that comes, that's the part that says only depend right here. With names of the people, the sciences will come together. One of the reasons is because before modern religious messengers were even born, already from off campuses throughout the world, which was different than their pretending, is legitimate science and observation of that. In other words, everyone was forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded to entertain appreciation of the campuses, the republic for which we stand, abridged. And it can't afford to have those principal treatments by that, and abridged principal treatments discerned relative to how the republic for which we stand and its campuses system and nature, the Constitution unabridged, is designed for us to use hyper evidential, for us to use how hyper foreign forced countries A through Z to be suits and ties, counters, exceptions. For example, speaking about economics, leaving out how the breaching method was entrenched. And our founders had no means to address that directly because they did not have free speech and everyone had to pretend other to an extent. Otherwise, that body would have been sensed, including if that body was a majority of people, and it would have been adapted to, including if it was everyone. for the same method, that because it has it that way at countries A through Z, any grouping of countries that comes to try to counter things, they're gonna be voices for humanity, for individuals and group differences, active reality that can't defend that and afford to have defenses proper from the hyper foreign, which nature is showing people A through Z. They need defenses from, but they don't recognize nature's demonstrations of this because everyone has been reading way worse than just fake news. News collusion slash us with all sides of criminal and civil cases and crime scenes, per even worse, too, in layers. Overt criminal enterprises, private ones, as families, as kids and adults, needing to hide collusions on and off campuses connected, actual motivations. This breaching method knew that nature would show. There's a human fact human nature breaching method that is involved with the syntax and the nature of people regarding their motivations for uses of their own names, other people's names, their roles with their uses of their principal treatments and syntaxes. Syntax is actually recorded with the value treatments, in other words, with instances treatments, with all that comes before them, formally and other, the subject treatments. So, with how we can appreciate subjects, individually grouped and simultaneously to an extent, it comes means to discern the same identity of value progression as generating other species bodies, that which is too great, too finite, with active relativity. For us to understand, except for the way it shows us to, including with when we get it wrong, how it demonstrates. But this breaching method, in fact, effectively only allowed rules at countries A through Z. With those demonstrations, for instead, nature's demonstrations of the breaching method, for example, nature demonstrates to us a human fact human nature breaching method is one of the scientific values that all those distinct natures of laws against Native Americans, against black, white, male, female, those differences uses. Black people's white spies difference. In other words, please, someone tell President Trump, through his first administration and through other administrations, the agencies have been showing them fake transcripts and the equivalent, many tied to and as former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and his co-defendants, their family members and their lawyers, and neighbors of them, who are increasingly involved with New Britain Superior Court, like, for example, with a Dearborn Street in Newington, Connecticut, and conjunctions to it and to that. There are people with the name, I forgot the name again, a Daryl Chandler. A Daryl Chandler tried to make a fake exception of knowing me. I think it was when I was a freshman or sophomore. I can't remember. I think it was when I was a freshman. But he's putting fake things in databases. I never even saw him around campus. They made that fake exception 1 or 2 times. He has something to do with Newington too, and with people and places associated with a Robert Rodriguez and Mike Roberts. I don't know if he knows them, if they know each other, but they also have collusions on my streets with the intelligence family and with Facebook. Changing and faking, hiding digital evidence is also with whiting forensics with them. And people next to the World Trade Center in New York City, in the court next to it, the morning of 9/11 attack, and the night before it, were people next to it too, are connected interstates and intercities. People with the name Scalora increasingly involved with Connecticut police forms and police departments, and retired Wethersfield police chiefs, and associated with police forms switching and forging names and fabricating fake transcripts into databases. Fake ties to little kids and adults at the Wethersfield police station, and they force Saudis to collusions with them some Mendez police have people named Demoro and Baba people named Scalora and people named Colosa. That was their cousins too. And they have a bunch of people at Central Connecticut State University in Newbury, Connecticut, involved with the house they moved into. Since before they moved there, involved with 2 police chiefs and intimate ties, involved with wire belt crimes, falsified police parts with them, overt criminal enterprises and private ones, child abusers, leaders of kids, years apart, first wars, and their roles with intelligence families on all sides of my house and all sides of theirs, with people from other areas, trying to force people to use people's other names or to shut up and just let them put more and more fake things in to fish the cover-ups. They don't have integrity. Get them the heck on paper and stop pretending it's personal. Black pupils, they see you and shit.